Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the next session of the AJL Profitability Hub, second edition. In this particular session, I will be talking about from value chain to food chain. How do we see at AJL Consulting the entire ecosystem of vacation rental where we connect guests with owners? It seems to be a pretty easy task to connect guests with owners, but we all know that it's a very challenging task, and it has become more challenging over the years. A lot of things are changing across the value chain, and we need to deal with a lot of complexity. We need to deal with technology. We need to deal with changing market environments. And this particular presentation we have developed with the work that we have done with some of our distinguished customers over the years, and we felt it's the perfect moment where we are talking a lot about profitability to give you some insights in where are we coming from and why we're pushing so hard that we need to take profitability into our focus, while revenue and simply focusing on revenue is not going to be enough going forward. So I would like to start with sharing my screen with you and run you through this presentation, this pitch deck, which should elaborate, which will give you more insights on what we're really all about and how we're viewing the market, and elaborate on some of the questions that you might have. Myself, I'm Simon Lehmann. I'm the co-founder and CEO of AJL Consulting, and I feel honored that we've been able to put this amazing conference together with all our speakers. And here goes a big thank you to Nicholas Galantini and also Vincenzo Cristiano and Ezio Albanese, our staff in Barcelona, who have put a lot of effort and work into this conference. So let me go and share the screen with you and dive right into it. So as I said before, we look at the future consolidation of the short-term rental ecosystem. There's a lot of things happening out there, and we definitely feel there's a lot more going to happen. So what do we see right now? We definitely see an increasing competitive pressure in the short-term rental space, or from all aspects, especially on the supply and the demand side. So when we have the demand side, obviously OTAs have taken huge amounts of market share, providing demand for you as property managers. And also on the supply side, it has become very competitive, especially in the leisure industry. Obviously, the main views that we've had so far was obviously pre-COVID-19, but we do believe that with COVID-19, our thesis and the consolidation of the vacation rental ecosystem is actually only going to accelerate and not decelerate with the incredible crisis that we're currently facing. So one thing that we truly believe, and I think with COVID-19 we have clearly seen that in reality, is that companies focusing on profitability have a far higher chance to survive any type of storm. I mean, I was amazed to see property managers out there who literally had oxygen for 10 to 14 days, and then they were forced to file bankruptcy. That's disastrous for a business that has been around for longer than hotels. Vacation rental is nothing new. Of course, we need to clearly separate the short-term rental business in the urban areas and the leisure business in the vacation rental industry, where the vacation rental industry has been around for a lot longer than what the STR business from an urban standpoint have been. And therefore, the leisure business is far more used to seasonality, adapt to costs in low season and high season, and can maneuver through that more comfortably than seeing a short-term rental where you build a business on pretty consistent demand. And if that obviously demand dries out entirely, obviously the cash flow will dry out entirely as well, and very rapidly. And if you aren't able to really reduce your costs dramatically, then the results have been brutal. And that's what we've seen in the marketplace. So I think even post-COVID, we need to start thinking about, hey, how can I build a profitable and sustainable business in an ever-changing ecosystem of vacation rental? And that's challenging because the ecosystem is actually far more complex than the actual business that we are in. So let me move on to the next slide. As I said earlier, we're not building rockets. We're actually connecting owners with guests. The business has been around longer than hotels. It's nothing new that we're sharing accommodation. We've seen that for a long time, and it's going to stay for a long time to come. While, connecting guests with owners, to a certain moment, it required some professional property managers to actually make that happen and put owners at ease that somebody's taking professionally care of their property and has the capability of providing good demand and a good return of the property to the owner accordingly. So this is what we're doing. We're connecting owners with guests, right? So, but this has become a lot more complex over the years. So first of all, we started to direct market these properties, maybe in the newspapers to start with. We put some ads in the paper. We were having catalogs. We're printing catalogs. We're providing them to travel agents. So this is where the thing really became bigger and bigger and bigger. And then when we had more properties, and we were in the past, we were managing the bookings with like wall calendars. I'm sure some of you remember those, where you had the properties listed on the left, and you had calendars across the entire year, and then you could mark the occupancy of each property manually, and you can see which property is available and which one is not, which one has been reserved, which one has been paid, etc., etc. So we're managing that complexity actually manually as well in the past, before PMSs really came into the market. And now we're counting hundreds of PMSs with different features to serve these property managers. And it's incredible how property managers have still so much different requirements in terms of technology and features and whatever. It surprises me, because at the end of the day, we're still in the same business. We're connecting guests with owners. We need to do cleaning. We need to, have a few functionalities that the PMS needs to manage, but it's absolutely something that is out there available to make sure it covers your needs accordingly with these PMSs. So we build a website to start with. Direct marketing is the first thing we could do. Hey, we have a website, so we could be found on Google, do some advertising, and then once the traffic picked up, we started to source a property management system on top of that. So when the vertical became really popular, for about 12 years now, or I would say even 15 years, when HomeAway came into the space, which is now called VRBO, to say, hey, we can aggregate these listings businesses where traditionally owners and also property managers were listing their properties. And all of a sudden, this became a respectable vertical. I mean, before we saw flights and obviously hotels and car rentals, but vacation rental, nobody really talked about. But soon thereafter, once HomeAway came into the game, all the others have started to realize, such as Expedia and Booking.com, hey, there is a travel vertical next to hotels that is actually interesting for the consumer. And we want to have that bookable, of course, not on request, not listed, bookable, especially with Booking.com, who went into this very aggressively 2007, 2008, even had their own website called villas.com, and then migrated that into Booking as well. So they were able to aggregate and mix vacation rental supply with hotel supply, which was done incredibly well, and created wonderful demand where, you could choose between a hotel and a vacation rental. At the beginning, it was a bit rocky because people didn't realize that they actually booked a vacation rental. But in today's world, 2020, you're used to book a vacation rental or a property, a single unit or a flat on Booking.com. Airbnb created a massive marketplace, more in the short-term rental industry in the urban markets. We have seen them struggling through this crisis quite considerably as well. VRBO went through many changes, from being a public company going to Expedia, massive management changes, and navigating in many different markets, rebranding from HomeAway to VRBO. So it definitely hasn't been an easy run for them either. Expedia trying to integrate more HomeAway inventory and actually building an own accommodation vertical for vacation rental themselves. TripAdvisor has always been very active in this space, have acquired a few distribution listing companies as well in the past, but they have ultimately never been extremely successful with TripAdvisor overall. But the OTAs have created 80% of the overall demand. So we got lazy, property managers got lazy. It was easier to get third-party demand than actually pushing your own direct marketing, with newsletters, making sure you have a strong CRM so you can engage with your customers. And it depends between the US and Europe, but we're talking between 80 and 60% third-party demand, which is quite considerable. So the dependency is high. We're using OTAs for our demand to fill our properties. And I think during COVID-19, we have realized how vulnerable we are to these third-party channels. And I do believe that we will see more direct bookings coming back again, where people try to have a stronger brand and work on SEO and be smarter on direct distribution to be less reliable on OTAs, especially when it comes to cancellations and forward bookings, which has been brutal, obviously, during this period. So we have the OTAs, we have our own website, and we're using our PMS, and then it will get even more complex. So complexity starts obviously now integrating with many, many different channels. And obviously here we listed only the very big ones, but there is hundreds of smaller agency channels, aggregators that are aggregating vacation rental content. And to connect to all those as a property manager through a PMS is very challenging, time consuming and complex as well. So therefore the channel manager came into the game and said, hey, here we are. We make it easy for you to access you 80, 70, 90 channels. All together, we have the integrations. We're maintaining all these different integrations. And let us not forget, an integration does not mean it's there for years. These integrations change constantly because the APIs are changing and therefore you need to make adjustments. So it's complex to deal with channels. And it makes a lot of sense for channel managers to connect to these major OTAs to make it easy, save you costs on integration and maintaining integrations as well going forward. And we see some interesting luxury channels coming forward as well, such as Homes and Villas by Merit. And I'm sure there will be more to come in specific sectors of the business. After that, we saw the metas coming into the game. For example, one of which is not even on here anymore, like tripping.com, one of the first meta search companies in vacation rental, who has raised a hell of a lot of capital, spent amazing amounts on direct marketing. But there's others like Apartum, Holido, Home2Go. Kayak has been around for years on flights, also hotels and vacation rental now as well. And of course, we can consider Google as a meta search as well with its own products. Now from the hotel ads and the hotel search products, now they're going also into the more targeted vacation rental product as well, where you can actually go directly from Google to property manager to actually book a property, or to one of the aggregators as well, which potentially will have a big impact on the role of OTAs and the market share of OTAs post-COVID as well. So we have now meta search, we have OTAs in the game, we have channel managers, we still run our website, and everything integrates into our PMS, which becomes more and more important overall. So considering all that, it's still amazing, and I alluded to that earlier, that 80% of the bookings come from the 5 big OTAs, which is an enormous amount. And there's property managers out there who are far less dependent, who are 80% direct, but these you can only count on a handful, pan-Europe or pan-United States as well. I think the vast majority is still higher dependent on third-party channels than they do on their own distribution. But I do believe that this is fundamentally going to change if you can build your own right know-how and have the right people driving your direct marketing strategy and maintaining good relations to your guests and drive your repeat rates. I think this is going to change again as well. And therefore, we do believe that potentially OTAs will lose on the market share, or maybe there's a consolidation going to take place. Who knows? We have seen how Airbnb and Booking and Expedia have went through this crisis, and we'll see who comes out of it on the other end stronger, or maybe weaker as well in the consolidation on that front, would also not surprise us at all. So after having all these different channels that created a tremendous amount of data, it became very important to us to start, analyzing data in order to make strategic decisions, understanding, hey, how large is my total addressable market, for example? How big is my competition? What is my competition doing? If I want to enter a new market, what's the demand in that market? What type of properties are the owners looking for? So data, which we call here business intelligence, and data has become very important. So we saw companies like AirDNA and Transparent coming into the market, which providing to pretty much any stakeholder in the vacation rental industry, from private equity to venture capital to real estate investors, all the way to local property managers, providing very interesting and insightful data for them to make strategic decisions, understand markets, the competitive environment, and the likes. At the same time, while we are extremely late against airlines and the hotel industry, we started to talk about revenue management. I think that's reasonably new to our industry as well. In the last 2 or 3 years, we've started to talk about revenue management, and we have adopted the same way in how airlines and hotels have approached revenue management, which is basically entirely detached from your cost management and only focuses on your top line, your comp set, and some of the major events that are happening, and looking at a little bit at the demand curve and forward occupancy. But it doesn't actually take in consideration the cost side. And that's where we at AJL Profitability believe that there is a huge gap, and that's something we are in the process of entering with AJL Pricing Solutions, to actually look at your pricing strategy from a bottom up and looking at your cost and make your allocations accordingly. One thing you should not forget is that airlines and hotels have far higher fixed costs to operate their assets than what we have in vacation rental. Vacation rental is exactly the opposite. So we cannot adopt the way hotels and airlines are doing revenue management, because in vacation rental, a booking creates between 60 and 80% of the total costs to the revenue that we generate. And therefore, we have far higher fixed costs, but we have very, very high variable costs on a booking. So we need to think about total costs that are being generated by a booking, and then look at the profitability on the property and booking level. So we're more than happy to allude to you more. If you're interested, come and contact us, and we'll be happy to show you our product and discuss through your pricing strategy accordingly. So in addition to the verticalization, basically we verticalized the hell out of this industry, right? We said we only connecting guests and owners, but what we have done is we have verticalized it, like the online travel industry has verticalized their ecosystem, and it's just become so tough to navigate. It's become super competitive, and all of these stakeholders that we're seeing on this chart here, they want a piece of the pie between the guests and the owners. So it obviously immediately results into massive margin compression. Margin compression by the OTAs. We're used to the leisure industry of having 25 to 30%, 35% margin. And now we have all these different stakeholders who want a piece of that margin, and we need to survive. While OTAs distribution is getting more expensive, we're being third-party dependent. So we're actually giving the control of our distribution out of the hand, while we need to pay them nearly half of what we actually earn. And then we need to look at all the different other pieces, tech pieces on our value chain that we can either add to create efficiency, but also add costs. So we have home automation, we have operation software, we have rent by owner technology, website builders, direct marketing tools, guest communication, auxiliary services. So all these services, all these verticals came up while the PMSs are trying to expand their value proposition and their offering. All the others across the value chain want to have a larger piece of that value chain as well. So this immediately results in higher operational costs, because your IT costs will go potentially up. It will not create the efficiencies that you're looking for, because you might not also need all this technology. And that's something for you to clearly consider when you look at your comp set, when you're looking at your own strategy, which technology makes sense for me to create the efficiency, to actually fight margin compression. What can I put onto the owner in terms of costs, what can I put onto the guest in terms of costs. So my margin is actually not decreasing, my margin is actually increasing while this verticalization is taking place in our industry, which without a doubt is extremely complex to navigate for all of us. And you know, how are you making sure you're benchmarking these technologies? Are you sure you're making enough research to choose the right one across the value chain that delivers exactly what you're looking for? So I think there's a lot of aspects that we need to consider looking at this massive fragmentation of the industry, but we also strongly believe that these market fragmentation will result in a consolidation for sure, because not everybody across the value chain can survive in just looking after one particular vertical. So we see a lot of companies who are now expanding its value proposition and want to be in other parts as well. You know, for example, dynamic pricing, revenue management system, are they more going into data? Vice versa. We heard meta search companies selling data like older rooms. So they're in data as well, and data wants to expand in other areas. You know, one thing that astounds me always when I look at that, the crazy thing about the verticalization of the value chain is that each and every one of these people across the different verticals, they share one thing in common, and that is the customer. That's you, the property manager. So basically, there's a limited amount of property managers worldwide. There's tens of thousands. The market is still growing and will grow even further post-COVID. We'll go back in more a local approach. Hyper-local is going to definitely stay for a long time to come, where consolidation is going to be super challenging on a large scale. So what does that mean? You know, each of these guys are after the same customer. So it's obvious that one has a good customer base and a good loyal customer base, that it can expand its value proposition. It's obvious that PMSs want to expand its value proposition. Maybe not in each vertical. They can't be experts in everything, but definitely they want to expand. Operation software as well. And we're making some examples on the next slide. So we put some names behind it. These are just the PMSs. To fill all PMSs that we have pretty much in the industry, we probably need 7 slides alone to list those. So we've just taken a few out of the industry that we have either done work with, that we know of, and we feel are a good player within the industry. So this is just a selection across the US and Europe, but obviously there's many more. So already making the right decision on a PMS can be a challenge. You know, do you do an RFP, a request for proposal? Do you know what you need to serve your needs in terms of technology? When you source a new PMS, how do you source that? Do you actually, you know, sit down with your team and look at your operation, say, hey, these are the features that we need to run a smooth operation? It's something definitely to consider as well. Which distribution channels do we want to have? Do we want to have them within the PMS or not? Do we want to have revenue management within the PMS or not? Do we rather source that from a third party who can provide us more data? So there's a lot of additional aspects that we need to consider while choosing technology. And the same goes across the value chain as well. So we have in the home automation space, like Operto, NoiseAware, which a lot of you know, they've done amazing work and also PR work, but they've been in the business for a while. They've built solid products as well to, you know, and I think these are one of the winners there in terms of, you know, post-COVID, in terms of home automation, you know, noise control, things like that. I think, you know, safety and security is a big aspect to the guests. You know, let us not forget that the US travel consumer has been asked for the last 15 years by Focusrite, you know, would you consider a rental? And for the last 2 years, the business of travelers in the US who rent are actually 30% of the total travelers. And for the last 2 years, it has not increased. So that means 70% of the travelers in the United States have not yet rented. And I think now is the best chance to convince them. And the reason why they're not rent, and one of the main reasons they don't rent, is actually safety and security. And I think even post-COVID, it becomes more important that we are being respected as a super professional industry, that we have everything under control and we can provide safety and security and put the guest at ease that a vacation rental is the best alternative for travel away from home. And if we do that, a lot of these companies are actually helping to make that happen. I think we can win and increase our market share substantially. So all these go into that, like Breezeway and Properly with their cleaning standards and cleaning protocols, which have become, the talk of town more than ever. And then we have alternatives for rent by owners, which want to have an alternative next to Airbnb. They want to have several different channels. They don't want to sit on one channel alone. So I think RBO platforms like HomeRes and others have huge opportunities to provide a great technology for an individual owner who doesn't want to use a property manager. Guest communication, another one, extremely important going forward. The guest wants to be safe and secure, but doesn't want to be pushed too hard. So having a good application to communicate, upsell additional services, providing, entry keys and whatever would be extremely important. Auxiliary services. So we see smaller businesses like Luggage Hero and Stasher who have created great opportunities for travelers in the urban areas to leave their luggage. Fantastic business. Check-in Scan, another one, and that provides scanning software for pre-arrival documents for markets like Spain and others where the police require traveler data. Amazing business because it's actually compulsory. So you need to do it. And this helps you to actually be very efficient and not having to photocopy passports and actually get them run through immediately before arrival. Superhawk, looking at the whole insurance aspect of the business, deposits and everything else, which is a painful process. And I think there's far more better ways in how we can handle our entire insurance and deposit matters as well. And I think Superhawk has built some phenomenal products. Transparent, amazing data that they're providing to the market, very rich, very deep and across the world from different sources, as well as AirDNA and key data. We have seen a lot from them lately in the market and heard a lot. They were very busy looking at the numbers and giving some guidance on what's going to happen, hopefully soon when bans are lifted and people are allowed to travel, at least domestically. I think we see definitely a silver lining on the horizon. And then we have the whole dynamic pricing and rate management platforms like Beyond Pricing, who has raised an enormous amount of capital from private equity, Price Labs, Wheelhouse, and also Rented.com, who are providing consulting for pricing strategy. So yeah, it has become complex. Everybody wants a piece of the value chain across between owners and guests, and therefore it's very challenging for any property manager to navigate through this technology and actually make the right decision. Margin compression we have mentioned. So looking at it overall, it is a complex world out there. We are actually very happy to help you to navigate through that, make the right decisions, make sure you're actually maintaining profitable. You don't need every piece of technology to navigate through that. You need to set the right priorities and to have the right strategy, and then source the products that help you to execute that strategy accordingly and make sure that your profitability is not being harmed by very high operating costs and distribution costs as well. So the ecosystem is going to consolidate. There's no doubt that all these companies across the different verticals can survive with taking a piece of that value chain going forward. And, I think COVID-19 has definitely accelerated that situation already and is actually going to accelerate it even further. It's sad that people will not be able to raise enough capital and funding to survive, but I think it will become easier and I guess less competitive as well to navigate through that ecosystem while we have some more clarity in, how much technology can we source to single partners versus 6 or 7 different platforms that we need to deal with, which makes it very difficult as well. So what could it look like? The market consolidation is definitely going to take place, as I alluded to. There's lots of different scenarios. We have seen the ones who have raised capital just prior to COVID-19 are definitely the ones who come out stronger out of this crisis. I think we will see takeovers. We will also see bankruptcies and closures. Unfortunately, we will see acquisitions, and we will see tech companies expanding its own technology to provide more across the value chain to the single user than what they have done today. So it remains super challenging. Keep your eyes open. Keep yourself informed. That's extremely important, that you know what's happening out there and what you need to run your business. I'm very happy that this session was brought to you by Skyrun, who is a franchise operator in the United States. They have kindly sponsored this session for AJL Profitability Hub second edition. I thoroughly hope that you enjoyed this session. You got some clarity on what's going on in this complex environment. If you need any more help, you will find me on Simon Lehmann at AJL-consulting.com. You'll find AJL Consulting on LinkedIn and all our staff, and you can reach out to us if we can be of service to you. So many thanks. Stay well, stay safe, and hope you will get some bookings coming your way soon.